Hey guys, Foxdrop here with a video on 5 of the most busted, broken things that exist in League of Legends. These are things that are, generally speaking, very hard to play against, specifically speaking, very frustrating to play against, and in some cases very hard to balance in a way that remains healthy for the game and for the specific thing or champion. These are some things where if you sit down and really think about them, you kind of think to yourself, actually, yeah, that's pretty crazy. Why is that a thing? However, these things are not necessarily ridiculously overpowered in the game context either. More or less, this is a list of things that are a little bit surprising to even exist in League, in my opinion. Don't forget as well, guys, that Fi and I are currently running a $1,000 RP Christmas giveaway in association with Players.tv. Free to enter. Check it out in the description down below. Anyway, the first thing I want to mention for this video is Cassiopeia, and not specifically Cassiopeia as a champion and her abilities. The thing that I think is busted and broken about her is the fact that she doesn't need boots. Now, I suppose from a logical point of view, it makes some sense that a slithering snake doesn't require boots to move faster, but by that logic, you got people like Nami, who probably wouldn't need boots either, people like Corki, who, you know, they're flying around in a helicopter, they probably don't need shoes either, and then of course, like Elise in her spider form, does she have to pay 4 times the price for her boots because she has to buy 4 pairs? Basically, the more you apply a logical standpoint to things in League of Legends, the more you're going to drive yourself insane. So if we disregard the logical argument, all that's left is the game balance argument, and in my opinion, there's not really a good argument for having Cassiopeia not require boots. I mean, she's already one of the strongest laners in the game. Her late game is really strong, she just becomes a machine gun mage. So it's definitely not like she's really strong early and then falls off later on. And not only does not requiring boots give you that extra inventory slot so that your late game becomes even more powerful because you're not taking up one slot with a pair of boots, but outside of that as well, her mid game power spike arrives a lot earlier because she doesn't have to spend like over 1,000 gold on boots. So whereas most mid laners, if they're looking for say like a 2-item power spike, they would have most likely bought their over 1,000 gold boots by that point, Cassiopeia can get that 2-item power spike without spending that 1,000 gold, so she gets it so much earlier. So to me, it just seems a little bit weird and a little bit ridiculous that not only does this heavily benefit her in the really late game, it also heavily benefits her in the really early game. So for me, it's just a little bit strange considering she is the only champion in the game who doesn't need boots, and she's not actually weak outside of that either. She's a really strong champion overall. It's not like she needs to kind of compensate for anything. The second thing I want to mention for this list is not a champion, but instead an item. It is Redemption. I've already done a video on Redemption talking about why it's pretty busted, about how this one actually specifically is really hard to balance in the game. If you want a really in-depth answer to why I think Redemption is busted, just go and watch that video. But the short answer as to why Redemption is pretty busted is because there's no downside for buying it. Most items, if you buy, you have to have the opportunity cost of not buying a different item. Specifically, if you're talking about support items with specific actives, generally speaking, they're quite niche. So for example, something like Mikhail's Crucible is a very niche item. It's only really good if you've got like a low mobility carry against something that can really easily catch them out. So if you've got Jinx against Fiora, maybe it would be a good idea to rush that Mikhail's, but outside of that, it's not really that useful of an item. And that's just talking about the active, not even talking about the stats. Like the stats are really niche as well. They're not really particularly good either. Like you definitely wouldn't be buying the item just to get its stats. So in theory, that makes Mikhail's quite a crap item in most situations, but really good in certain niche situations, so there's a strategy involved in buying it. And at its core, this is why I think Redemption is busted, because none of those rules apply to Redemption whatsoever. There is no champion in the game that wouldn't want to buy Redemption as far as its stats go. The active as well is ridiculously universal. It's not like it's an active that you only want to be getting in certain situations, like the example we just mentioned, Mikhail's Crucible. It's an active that is not only high impact, but that you could justify having in any single team comp, in any single game, any single situation, it will be useful. And don't get me started on the fact that it has a ridiculous range that you can cast it from, the fact that you can use it while you're dead. Like those things by themselves completely reward bad play. Like if you get caught out of position, you're not close to your team, or you die, don't worry, you can still use your Redemption. Yeah, overall I just think it's a pretty busted item. The third thing on this list is Tahm Kench, specifically with Tahm Kench, his W. Now Tahm Kench's W is one of the most frustrating abilities in the game to play against, and the reason why I think it's so busted is because there's nothing really like it in the game. On top of that as well, it heavily rewards sloppy plays from your allies. If you're playing against a team that has a Tahm Kench and you make a good proactive play, you catch someone out of position, you should be rewarded for that. But if you're playing against Tahm Kench, he will eat that person and just walk away. Now, of course, in theory, it's not necessarily bad that you have a champion that can marginalize the mistakes of your allies. Someone like Jana, for example, has a shield to save your allies, has the ultimate to knock back and to heal, has disruption for the enemy team. But the reason why I think Jana is so different to Tahm Kench is because even though by design they kind of achieve similar things, Tahm Kench is just way too easy, like one button, boom, get out of jail free. Jana can be equally frustrating at times, but firstly you probably have to use your ultimate to really save someone, and secondly, if someone gets proper caught out of position, they're still donezo. Like, there's only so much you can do as Jana to save someone, whereas in Tahm Kench there's a lot you can do to save someone. On top of that as well, depending on the amount of threat that your ally is under, if you're playing Jana, you'd have to use pretty much all of your abilities. If you're playing as Tahm Kench, you'd only have to use one ability, and it wouldn't even need to use your ultimate. On top of that as well, which is something I find really bonkers that even exists, not just the fact that you can save someone with your W from pretty much any situation, but it actually has an offensive use as well. You can displace someone heavily with your W, and on top of that too, you do a ridiculous amount of percentage health damage. Before we move on to our penultimate point, boys and girls, just want to remind you to hit the subscribe button if you're enjoying this video, you want to see more stuff from me. Although having said that, YouTube's subscription feed is a little bit busted right now. Maybe I should put that in this video. Maybe that should be the next point I make. Either way, thanks so much for checking this video out. Thank you for watching so far. We'd love to see you around here more, but all that out of the way, let's move on to the fourth point. Rengar overall as a champion. Now, Rengar has seen more reworks than your mother has seen penises, and that is saying quite a lot. And there is a reason why Rengar gets reworked so frequently, and a reason why after every single rework, people are still complaining about how busted he is. The thing with Rengar, in my opinion at least, is that in order for him to exist with his identity, in order for him to truly be Rengar, he has to be pretty unhealthy for the game. Like, he has to have that stealth element to him, he has to have that assassin element to him, he has to be able to jump out of nowhere and one-shot someone or be a heavy threat to these carries who are left out of position. But where is the line that you draw between being a huge threat to an AD carry out of position and being someone who's just oppressive to play against if you're an AD? Because here's the thing, if you are playing a squishy, you're playing an AD carry and you split push and you push out way too far, then you're probably going to die. But there are loads of champions that can kill you in that situation, and the counterplay to that situation is not being an idiot, putting wards down, and just in general, again, not being an idiot. But the problem is, if you then have a champion whose whole archetype, whose whole identity revolves around exploiting these people out of position, you end up with a champion who's really just a little too good at doing it. And in my opinion, that's the thing with Rengar, is that in order to separate himself from other champions who can find people out of position and kill them, he needs to have that little bit extra. And it's that little bit extra that, in my opinion, will always make Rengar a little bit busted or broken. Essentially, the TLDR of it all is that champion, as an identity by design, is meant to be very good at catching people out of position. But in order to separate himself from other champions who are also good at it, he needs to be extra good at it. And that's kind of where he becomes too good at it and not fun to play against. And this is what, in my opinion, makes Rengar quite hard to balance, why he's quite a problematic character in that regard, is because if he's good at doing what he's meant to do, what he's designed to do, then he's often oppressive to play against. He's too strong, he's busted. But if he's not good at what he's doing, then he's usually pretty useless, because he's kind of like a one-trick pony. Anyway, hopefully you got my point on that one, but I'll move on because I'm probably confusing too many people, including myself. And the last thing I want to mention for this video is Fiora, and specifically how overloaded her kit is. Now, I don't specifically think that Fiora is overpowered as a champion. I don't think she's like, oh my goodness, no Fiora, please, oh my goodness, QQ. I'm not coming at it from that point of view. I just think overall, her kit is just ridiculously busted. Like, someone designed her rework and put in so many things that I think that they forgot to take a few things out when they were finished. Like, honestly, I think you guys don't realize just how much Fiora has in her kit, right? Like, I'll read it out to you guys, okay? So, percentage health damage is the first thing, true damage, a heal, a move speed steroid, a gap closer, including one that goes over walls, an ability that applies on hit effects, damage nullification, crowd control nullification, a slow, an attack speed slow, a stun, an auto attack reset, an attack speed steroid, another slow, and a massive AoE heal. Like, that is an insane amount of stuff to have in one kit. Like, I was actually watching the AMA of League of Legends lead game designer, and someone asked him, why does Fiora have an attack speed slow? And he just said, I don't know. Like, I even think the lead designer of League of Legends knows that Fiora has way too bloody much stuff. And if you play against a Fiora, you'll understand that she's pretty frustrating to face. Just whenever you think you've got something sussed out about her, she whips something else out of the bag. Honestly, it's just busted. Like, there's just too much stuff there. There's not really much else to say. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, boys and girls. If you did, you can leave me with that cheeky thumbs up. You can find me on Facebook, on Twitter, and catch me streaming at twitch.tv/Foxdrop. Don't forget to check out the giveaway in the description down below. Go hit up my second channel for full gameplays every single day. But most importantly, boys and girls, have a wonderful day, morning, evening, wherever it is where you are from. And I will see you in my next video.